All right, it's 6:05, so we'll go ahead and get started. But thank you guys for coming out. Hope you guys are having a good week this week. Just want to start off with some upcoming events and that sort of thing. So as we talked about in the email, we're not going to be doing river walks anymore just because it's getting cold, not too much out there. And then also with this coming weekend, we'll have the time change. It's going to be dark way too early. So instead, we're going to just do other stuff to kind of hang out on Fridays if people want to. So tomorrow, we're going to go to Chipotle and just get dinner. Nothing too much because we have the big day then on Saturday. So don't want to be up too late the night before. But yeah, Saturday is the big day. I think last I checked, the signups in the group meet weren't going too fast, so I may end up just making teams, but we'll see. But yeah, we'll get teams together, come up with plans, and then coordinate how we're doing that. If we're gonna like meet up at the end or something like that, and get dinner, see totals, all that. 11, 12, November 12th, that's next Friday. So we'll figure out then if we're gonna do something then getting together, maybe a little bit more than just dinner. We'll see, we'll talk in like the group meet, that sort of thing. The next meeting will be November 18th, so 2 weeks from today, as usual. And then that'll be right before our trip to Glen Helen. So I'll send out a sign-up thing about that soon. But we're going to the Glen Helen Raptor Center. It's about an hour west of here. And it's a really awesome stuff they have there for raptor rehab. And then there's also trails around there to do some hiking and birding. So should be a really good day. It's gonna be on a Sunday. So for people who can't come on Saturdays all the time, that should be a good change for that. But going on to today's meeting, if I can get this to work. There we go. So we're going to talk about Ohio bird conservation. So this is a topic that I know some people requested last year when we sent out a survey about different topics. And it's really good, just an overview to really see specifically about Ohio, what we're doing, what's been done in the past. And then also, I know a lot of ENR classes might touch on certain things, but we have a lot of people in the club now who aren't necessarily ENR or FFW majors. So it's really fun then to give an overview of kind of what conservation looks like. So if you have any questions or comments at any point, I would just touch on a bunch of different things. So if you have something you know more about a certain topic you want to talk about, jump in, we'd love to hear it. So first off, I want to kind of go into the history of conservation in Ohio and just point out a few examples of what have been some successes, to just general stories about what we've done in the past. So this picture here is a Howard Marsh National Park up in Northwest Ohio. And that kind of goes into the first example I want to give, and that's of the Great Black Swamp. So it was the result of a glacier. There's a clay surface underneath that water is collecting on, it's surrounded by dense forest. And it stretched, as you can see, across a lot of Ohio and into Indiana. And it was a fantastic habitat, but then in the mid-1800s, there was a ditching law that they were able to drain it because it was dangerous to people and difficulty with agriculture. So by the 1900s, it was mostly gone, but now we're realizing how important that habitat really was. So there's been a lot of restoration in that Northwest Ohio region, restoring wetland habitat. So you've heard us talk about the Big O' Week American birding, a lot that's centered on these wetlands habitats and sprint parks around there. Toledo's metro parks are phenomenal. And in 2018, they introduced Howard Marsh Metro Park. So that was on the previous slide here. As you can see, it's really big and it's already had so much success. Within the first year or two, we had Wilson's phalaropes breeding again, which was only, I believe, the third time they were breeding in the state. Yellowhead blackbirds, black terns, I think other blackneck stilts breeding. So a ton of species that we don't really get breeding across the state in large numbers immediately went to this new park. So it's really going to be exciting to see as the years go on how this park's building up, and just a great example of restoring this type of habitat and conservation in Ohio. Other pictures here, here's the Wilson's phalarope, and then this is Maumee Bay State Park, so that's just another one of the wetlands up there. It was pretty low this year compared to usual, but there's just so much that they're restoring up there, and it's been really awesome. Another example that you don't really think about for conservation in Ohio, this isn't as much a success story, but just interesting to note, is that we used to have Carolina parakeet here in Ohio. So it's been extinct since the early 1900s. They're not sure exactly why it went extinct. There wasn't much research at the time. They wondered about shooting, habitat loss, possibly disease. But it's just really interesting to think about a parakeet living in Ohio and being adapted to this climate. So they really prefer the sycamore bottomland forest, and they're documented at salt licks in Ohio. So just something cool to think of. The salt is a good source of nutrients. And then also, it's been said that it helps with their gizzard and digestion there. So really cool species that I've had in Ohio. You can see this through a lot of the like eastern and midwestern US. But that's not as much a success story. But realizing examples like this are how we like push forward for more conservation in the state in the future. So then a lot of people know about bald eagle conservation story. I feel like that's taught in a lot of like high school biology classes, a really big example with DDT and bioaccumulation, their shells, all that stuff. But it's just fun to point out about bald eagles in Ohio because they've had a huge comeback. So even as recent as 1979, there are only 4 breeding pairs in the entire state, and as of 2020, there are over 350. So you can see these are really centered in that Northwest Ohio region. But then here in Franklin County, we have a good number. 5 in Franklin, but then Licking nearby with 17, Delaware 13. So it's not really surprising anymore to see eagles just around in Ohio, wherever we're at. And I'm sure if you've been out birding, you've had someone tell you that that's not how it used to be a few decades ago. So it's just really cool. That's definitely a success story here in Ohio. Peregrine falcons were really impacted by that as well. And that's still so exciting to see them recovering as well, having the pair here on campus. Always a treat. So that's just a fun success story. Then the other example I wanted to point out that's been really popular in media lately are our piping plovers. So the Great Lakes population of piping plovers are endangered. The general population is near threatened. But what's really cool is this past year was the first time they bred in Ohio in 83 years. So you can see up here, I forget the names of the babies, but these were the 4 babies this year. And it was really cool how the community really rallied around them and supported their conservation. So there were people watching these birds 24/7, always monitoring to make sure no one was disturbing them, the nests were safe, there weren't any dogs off leash on the beach messing with them, anything like that. And as you can see, that can be kind of funny at times, is the community just lost it with them. So Nish and Nellie were the parents, and you could buy hats that went directly into their conservation. You can see written in the sand on Maumee Bay Beach, that's where they were, Nish and the 4 we all adore. Bakeries nearby sold cookies with the piping plovers on them. So it's just really fun to see how much everyone really got into supporting conservation. I had people who aren't even into birding, like tagging me up on Facebook, being like, did you see about this? And it's just really cool because like, well, we can kind of laugh at some of the extremes that people went to about these. It's awesome to see how non-conservation or environmentally focused people really got behind conservation here. I know the governor went to see them with his family, and it was just really cool, like how much people cared about them. So that's just a few examples of what conservation in Ohio has looked like over the years. But kind of moving into like where we're focused now and how we go forward. The big I'd say organization that's really like a lead in this is the Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative. So OBCI, and it brings together nonprofits, businesses, government agencies, citizens, all together supporting bird conservation. So our biggest priorities are forest management and lights out, which I'll go into in a second. But we're really blessed to have Matt Schumar right here on OSU's campus. So he was at the first meeting, but he's the main contact for OBCI. And he loves just getting involved with students. Anything you have questions of, reach out to him with any opportunities you want to get involved with. He is a phenomenal contact to know. And we love him here at the club. But kind of going into what their priorities are, they really say a big one is sustainable forest management for birds. So this isn't going to look the same all across Ohio. Obviously, we have a lot of different habitat across the state. If you're thinking of Southeast Ohio, with the very hilly forest, then talking again about Northwest Ohio, it's a lot more wetland habitat with some dense forests around that. So this isn't going to look the same all across the state. So that's why they have specific management guides. So here's the Managing Forested Birds in Southeast Ohio. They'll put out resources like that, giving suggestions for conservationists and managers. And they also have workshops to help teach. They go down to these forests, and they just have a ton of great resources focused on bird conservation. And why forest management is really important is I'm sure we've heard a lot about habitat fragmentation, forest fragmentation, and that's so crucial for our birds here in Ohio. And as climate change goes on, it's just going to get worse. So we're talking about the habitat itself as the species composition of these forests will be changing. Then also the phenology, so the timing. If you're thinking about forest composition changing, a lot of insects go with that, where they're correlated with specific species of plants and trees and that sort of thing. And the birds time their migration to match up with that. The birds migrate because they want to hit that boom where we have the peak of resources. And if the resources are different species, different timing because temperature, climate, all that's different, then migration is not going to match up as much anymore. So you might have too early of migration, too early of hatching, too early of fledgling. And these young birds and any birds just won't have the resources they need to support their populations. So the National Audubon Society says that 34% of Ohio's 209 regular species are vulnerable as a result of climate change. So it's really important that we're managing our forests and helping adapt them so that as climate change is occurring, we're prepared and helping prepare habitat for these species. So just kind of showing an example of this is from the Audubon Society, is when it's talking about a bunch of just different types of birds. These are some that they selected from Ohio. But if you're looking, okay, you can't see it, in the summer up here, so these are the less vulnerable species, the more vulnerable species. And you can see that really, while there's a wide range, the most vulnerable species to climate change are those in our eastern forests. And then this is shown even more if you're looking in the winter. So while a lot of our winter birds are more on this less vulnerable side, these eastern forest birds are again really vulnerable to climate change. So that's going to make forest management in Ohio really important for bird conservation because that's where a lot of our birds are going to be at risk. So a good example of that is the scarlet tanager. So I have a few birds I'm going to pull out and highlight here because the National Audubon Society said that they're kind of our most at-risk species right now. So scarlet tanager is a big one because they're really sensitive to forest fragmentation. So as urban development expands, as climate's changing, these forests are broken up. Scarlet tanagers are really sensitive to that because they prefer more deep forests. So if the climate warms 3 degrees, possibly 2/3 of the current breeding range will be unsuitable. So by 2080, they expect there to be a 93% shift in the current range. So you're thinking these birds will have to be moving with that change in forest. And one possibility is for them to move west. But if you think going out there, you then have other species that they'd be in competition with. So this highlighted the western tanager, and they're saying that those would likely outcompete the scarlet tanagers. So you have to think about then the new conflicts they would be in. So it's really important to be managing our habitat in Ohio to keep habitat available for these guys. Moving on to the other big focus of OBCI is lights out. So we talked about that with the club a lot, but general lights out in the US in general is estimated 1 billion birds are killed in the US annually from fatal window strikes. Lights Out Chicago said that when you adjust it, turning out lights, putting up reflective stuff on or reducing the reflectivity of the windows, you get an 80% reduction in the amount of mortality. So it's really important then that we're collecting this data and then also working with places across the state to kind of make some of these changes, like turning out the lights during migration season. And you can there's a bunch of different things like films you can put on the windows, cords that you can hang that the birds can see. It might not be necessarily as aesthetically pleasing to us, but it's going to save a lot of bird lives. So Lights Out Cleveland, to show you how prominent this is in Ohio. Since spring of 2017, when they started, they've had over 10,000 birds they just reached. So that is a huge number. Lights Out Cleveland has a project. We have ours on campus. There's also Lights Out Columbus and a smaller group going in Lights Out Cincinnati. So this is, I think Lights Out Toledo also has been going for a bit. So it's just really important to keep getting these major cities involved because Ohio is such a big area of migration. I'm going to jump into the campus for those of you who aren't involved in our Lights Out project, kind of showing how it's been going. As you can see, campus is a big issue looking at the reflectivity of the windows. So we notice a lot of overnight birds confused by the lights. They're getting drawn in and then hitting windows migrating. That's a lot of what you see in other cities. But also a lot of what we see are after that sunrise time when the birds are dropping in and normally would be confused by light. Instead, when the sun's up, we're having this reflectivity of clouds, trees, all that, and birds that already dropped in the campus likely getting confused by that. So I have a white-throated sparrow here at the RPAC. You can see how reflective that window is. And we get a lot of fatal window strikes, but it makes it more rewarding when we get releases. So here's a couple of examples we have of a red start taking a little stop on its way of being released on Tyler's arm from a couple of years ago. Molly with an ovenbird on the right. So we'll take these birds to the wildlife center if we don't think they're ready to be released, but a lot of the times they're just stunned and they'll perk up in a second and we can release them. Let's go along the top. So we actually got a donation a couple of years ago from the Ohio Young Birds Club and Black Swamp Bird Observatory. They gave us $1,000 towards Lights Out. They were really excited about what we were doing and just the work of the club in general. So it's just cool to see the changes that we're having on campus. We'll start working with buildings on campus about reducing light, reducing the reflectivity of windows. So it's just really exciting to see what we're able to be doing. But so why is this a particular risk in general? Like I mentioned before, you have these migrants that are migrating through and the light is confusing to them. They're drawn towards it, so they're flying lower and can hit the windows. And then also, there's been some studies done. There's a recent study in 2019 about why certain birds are drawn in. So today we had our first yellow-rumped warbler, or second. And it's really interesting to think about that, because if you watch the Cape May video that got posted, or like other times just birding out on your own in Ohio, you'll see that's a very abundant migrant. So it's weird to think like, why is that one getting drawn in, or why not as much? We have a lot of, not like a ton, but we've got a decent number of like morning warblers, a couple of Connecticut warblers. So those are warblers that you don't see much at all. So it's weird to think that we'd be getting those, but having more of those than some of our common species. So there's a lot of research going on. They're not sure entirely why, because again, there's variation with this. Not every species fits into a pattern. But the general thought they have going right now is that there's a higher frequency of birds that emit flight calls than just simply their abundance. So flight calls are associated with social groups. So these birds, when they're migrating, allow these flight calls kind of to locate where other birds of the same species are and form groups. So if you have these flight calls being emitted, they'll join groups together, more birds in the space, more likely to hit windows. So that's a thought going right now. And as you can see, here's a couple of graphs from that project. So you can see the collision rate, if they emit a flight call, the yes are much higher than the no's, and then also the light level. As there's more light, there's more collisions, which makes sense. So that's photos from today. That was a dark-eyed junco this morning. And it's a lot of early mornings, cold mornings this time of year, but it's really worth it because you know the data that you're collecting will be going towards conservation. So those are the main two targets that OBCI says, but obviously there's a lot of other threats facing our birds in Ohio. So I just kind of want to hop in and show what some of those were. The first one is outdoor cats, and I could go on about this on and on as a pre-vet student, but cats are invasive species. Yes, we love them. They're sweet, innocent, and they chase their little toys, but they're carnivores, and no amount of domestication is going to change that. So they've been shown to have contributed to the extinction of 33 species globally. In the US alone, they kill 1.4 to 3.7 billion birds and 6.9 to 20.7 billion mammals in the US alone. That's a wide range. There's so many feral cats. I think it was in the past 40 years, the amount of feral cats has tripled. And it's just a huge problem that we're facing. A lot of people want to fight feral cats with trap, neuter, release programs, but as we know, they're still in the environment. So even if they're not breeding, and studies have shown that that doesn't really reduce the population that much because there's still cats getting dumped outside all the time. So the populations are constantly brought back. So even if these cats aren't predating on birds themselves, their presence alone impacts nesting success. So studies have shown that just the stress of having a cat predator nearby will cause nest failure on birds. And overall, it's just better for the cats anyways to be indoors. Outdoors, they're facing cars, fights with dogs with other cats diseases, you have FIV, FELV, there's all these different diseases, parasites that in general, it's better for the cat, it's better for the birds, just to keep them inside. So the focal species for this to talk about is the wood thrush. So wood thrush has a bunch of different things going on with it. Cowbird parasitism is one thing. So cowbirds are nest parasites. They'll lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and then these young birds can outcompete the native babies. But so that's one thing wood thrush are dealing with. Nest predation by cats and other species is a big thing. And also habitat fragmentation. They like these forests that, as we discussed, are disappearing. And so the way the American Bird Conservancy talks about this is that predation by cats is an impact on an already declining species. So they have other factors that they're struggling with, and this is just one more that's contributing to their loss. So from 1970 to 2014, there was at least a 60% decline in their population. So the Audubon Society says that this is one of our species at risk, and yeah, trying to prevent cat populations. So maybe ways other than TNR, trap data release. I know there's some trap and euthanasia programs. The problem is that unless you get all of them, you can make a kind of vacuum effect where there's a lot more resources for less cats, so then they produce more and you end up having a bigger population than you started with. So I don't have the answer. I wish I did, but that's just one thing we're going to be having to face with conservation. Another problem that you see in Ohio is with house sparrows. So house sparrows are not a native species, and you deal with them a lot if you're managing bluebird boxes. So the competitors for these cavity nests, and they'll kill adults and the young. So we used to have bluebird boxes that we monitored on campus. They've since been taken over by someone else. But you can see them out at like Chadwick Lake, and I think part of Waterman Farm had some. But especially our Waterman Farm boxes just got completely taken over by house sparrows. And the number of times we go to check the boxes and you'd find a dead bluebird inside and the nest abandoned, and house sparrow would kill the babies, kill the parents, and it's just a really big problem. So if you're doing any bluebird boxes, any of that sort of thing in Ohio, it's just something you need to be aware of, that you'll have to deal with house sparrow management, because otherwise you're just attracting these bluebirds there, setting them up for failure. So that's a big conservation issue, that you can promote some of those species. I know also like tree swallows will nest in these boxes and that sort of thing. And then something we deal with is pesticides. So particularly neonicotinoids or neonotics. So one seed covered in these pesticides can kill a songbird. So we're worrying about our birds that are in agricultural fields, out in these open field habitats. Other pesticide problems are like rat poison and raptors and that sort of thing. We talked about eagles, DDT, that sort of thing. But going more into this, they're a particular risk because they have a bunch of different weird impacts on them. So planting in the spring or planting seeds that are coated in this, and all these birds that are migrating will then have these problems where they're going to, and then also our breeding birds will have problems because they're ingesting the seed here. So direct and indirect ways that this is impacting them. So neonicotinoids are an appetite suppressant that leads to weight loss, which can cause difficulty breeding for our breeders here, or migratory delays for our birds that are migrating through and eating during the spring. Then also it has a weird like neural impact. So they inhibit the receptors of acetylcholine, that has impacts on the central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. That leads to a weird disorientation with migration. So the birds have trouble figuring out where they're going, and there's a really interesting impact on these birds. So again, figuring out different solutions for how we're doing pest control with agriculture will be really important in conservation. So our species here is the bobolink. So again, this is another example of bird that the National Audubon Society says at risk. And it's facing other factors, habitat, all that stuff. But because they prefer agricultural fields and that type of habitat, pesticides are a particular risk with them. But the good thing is bobolinks are really adaptable, so they should be able to hopefully adapt to changes going on. But it would really help if we can provide changes for them as well. So then, disease is an interesting thing for conservation in Ohio. It's not as prominent as a lot of other places when you hear about conservation. I know if you're talking about like Hawaii, they have a lot of problems with disease and that sort of thing. And you probably heard the most about disease in Ohio with this unknown feeder illness this past summer. So they're still doing research, still don't know exactly what it was. They're reporting crustiness on the eyes of birds, some neurological symptoms. But it's just interesting to see. I did a quick Google search and you can see all this stuff pop up saying like, how bird illness, can we feed our birds? Can we come back? I got so many Facebook messages from people asking us when to put their feeders back out. And there's not really seen instances of this anymore. So ODNR said it's safe to put your feeders back out, all that. But it's just really interesting that, as we know, diseases can just pop up. And they can have big impacts in Ohio, but thankfully, historically, we haven't had as many problems with other states. We have West Nile virus in Ohio that impacts mostly corvids, but some other species, so like your jays and your crows. But it's not a huge problem that's overwhelming the population, but it's just interesting to note that it's going on in Ohio. So then what can we do about it? Because that's a lot of really heavy, like, wow, that's sad, our birds are facing a lot. But that's how wildlife is, and that's why a lot of us are in our majors here. If you're in a wildlife major or something related, because we want to do something about this. So I just drew together some simple steps that you can do. But the first thing I want to highlight is purchasing your duck stamp. So that's something that's talked about in a lot of classes. And it's really funny. If you're up in that Northwest Ohio region, especially during biggest week time, there's a huge sign that the words have gotten kinder each year because I think there are complaints. But it's telling birders that you actually care about wildlife. You should purchase your duck stamp. Because if you think about it, there's a lot of historical arguments between hunters, wildlife watchers, that sort of thing. But when it really comes to it, we all love wildlife and we're all trying to take advantage of it in our own ways, whether how you enjoy it, we're all trying to promote wildlife. So I'd say even though like duck stamp supports hunting can be great. And honestly, this money is going straight into preserving wildlife habitat, this wetland habitat. And nothing that we're doing for bird watching is going directly into it, quite like duck stamp is and other hunting ways of earning money. So we don't have a tax when we buy our optics, our binoculars, our scopes, anything like that. So it supports what hunting's doing, it's supporting our wildlife. So it's a really great purchase. So as is saying, it's made over $850 million and helped protect 5.5 million acres of habitat since the 1930s, only cost $25. So it's a great thing you can do to support the birds. And then also the wildlife legacy stamp is another thing that varies in price. There's a few different ones, but that supports the Division of Wildlife. Other things are just making smart decisions. So some of these are kind of general and vague, but if you just really think about it, helium balloons is a big thing. There's a big project called Balloons Blow. And it's thinking about when you're releasing helium balloons, it can be fun, exciting for an event. But where those balloons are going, they're not actually going super high up into the atmosphere. They're causing a problem somewhere else on Earth. So a lot of the time people think about this with our oceans and marine wildlife. But this is happening on Lake Erie, on our coast up here. This is happening in forests. You can find balloons just about anywhere. I find them around campus and trees. So a lot of birds can get them tangled up with them, ingest them, and just have all sorts of problems. So that is a conservation thing that we can do here in Ohio. Another cool thing is bird-friendly coffee. So a lot of coffee is grown down in like Central America, South America. And what bird-friendly coffee does is it's an agroforestry technique that grows this coffee in the shade of the native trees down there. So it preserves the habitat down there with the coffee growing in the shade underneath. And it's actually been found to sometimes produce even more coffee than other ways of management for that. And the cool thing is also by preserving the forest, coffee growers can also have their own like lumber industry by managing the trees and cutting some down and that sort of thing. So it's a really cool way. And this is impacting our birds here in Ohio. Because if you think about it, a lot of our migratory species, they may be with us for the spring migration, maybe breeding here, but then they're going back down to these tropical climates in the winter. So by supporting habitat down in Central and South America, we're still supporting our birds here in Ohio. because I need that same habitat just as much as I need the habitat up here. So that's a really cool thing. I'm trying to think of the main brand of the bird-friendly coffee. But you can buy it online really easily. It's not crazy expensive. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't really know relative, but I've heard people say it tastes great and isn't over the top price wise. Also just getting involved in general, you can do for conservation. So research in general, we have Lights Out that we were saying, we do a lot of data collection work with that will go directly back into conservation. But any type of research you're doing, any research projects, banding, internships, all that, you're collecting data that will be used to discover something else about birds that we can do to support the conservation. Even simply eBird is abundance data, and you're seeing where species are, and that can just help supply more information, maybe get someone thinking about a project they want to start, maybe adding data to a project. So just doing whatever you can to get involved in research can be really helpful for conservation in general. Something cool with citizen science, I'm talking about that collecting data. We have two really cool things here in Ohio and across the US. So Christmas bird counts are really cool. Those will be coming up soon, December 14th through January 5th. And there are these 15-mile circles that are covered, and they'll have a compiler of a bunch of different counters. And what you do is you go out for a day and you'll be assigned part of that circle, and you just record all the birds you see, what numbers, all that stuff, and then you bring it back to the compiler. They put up the data for the whole area. Usually the ones I've gone to, they'll have food available, hot chocolate, all that fun stuff. Then you can go back at the end of the day, hear the whole numbers for the whole area. And it's been really important in the past, again, this climatic shift data. So we're talking about how the summer tanager, other species, their habitat's going to be moving. And this is a lot how they're getting that data to see how it's shifted in the past. So I put the link here that's really cool to see where Christmas bird counts are, because I believe this is the longest running citizen science project. So if you go to the website, you just Google find Christmas bird count near me, it pulls up this map. And these are all Christmas bird counts going on. So the green are ones that you can just walk up to and go to that day. Yellow, they want you to sign up beforehand. Red, they're not taking any new people. But if we go to Ohio, we can see right here in the center, contact Robert Thorne to get involved. Let's see. Yeah, anyone who's interested, there's 16 different teams. I've done, I think it was this one, the Darby Creek one, that was a really fun one out in Port of Battelle. And you can just get involved really easily. It's fun. It's kind of become a Christmas tradition for me where I do at least one wherever I'm at that Christmas. And it's just really fun. It gets you out birding. Sometimes with a slower time of year for birding anyway. It gives you a fun competition trying to see just like how many species you can find that day, and you know you're giving it back to something really beneficial. Something else are breeding bird surveys. So Christmas bird counts, obviously during the winter. Breeding bird surveys will be during the summer. So these are really road-based, and you're stopping every half mile to count the birds that are in the area. And you're only counting the adults, but this is giving us breeding season. So again, it's trends data. We're seeing with Christmas bird count, how birds are shifting with climate during the winter. Breeding bird survey, we're seeing how they're shifting during the summer. So this can be something really cool to get involved with. There's not as much of a like CleanSat website that I know of at least for getting involved, but I'm sure, is there one? Okay, there is one. Okay, I just haven't seen it. But yeah, there's ways to get involved with that wherever you're home for the summer, if you're in Columbus. And it's just a really cool way to also be participating in citizen science and just data collection. And then also just a big point is using what you know. That's something that I really noticed in my time here at OSU. Is there stuff I take for granted growing up as a birder that I just think about certain things. So one example was last week I had to interview a professor for a class, and we were talking about feral animals, and she's from Australia. So she was talking about trap, neuter, release and how they've been using that to try and lower cat populations in Australia because they're having problems with the wildlife over there. But so she was saying that she thought trap, neuter, release was this great program because you're going to reduce the number of cats. And I just made one simple comment where I was like, it's really interesting to hear your point on this because I volunteered in cat shelters where they've talked about TNR. And also from the wildlife side, I've heard the problems with it about these birds still being outside. Just saying that alone, this is a professor who's been working at OSU for years. And she goes, oh, I didn't realize people were against it. And I was like, what? And so I'm trying to just act normal and be like, oh, really? But you don't think about the stuff that's just comes second nature to you, but a lot of people don't think about. So there's lots of different opportunities. If you know, I know my aunt and uncle have bluebird boxes, and just talking to them about house sparrow management, because that might be not be something they're thinking about they need to do. And just lots of different things. Really our education here at OSU really surrounds us by like, those people with similar mindsets about this. So just sharing what you know with people you come in contact with. It might depend on the relationship with that person. Just keep it polite, but just be really positive about how these people can make a difference. And as you can see with the Ohio piping plovers, people get really excited when they know that they're making a difference for conservation. They might not be what they would consider an outdoorsy person, but they often still care. So if you can really make it applicable to them, they love to hear about it. So just everyone here is in a position that they can make a big difference. So that's just a kind of overview of conservation in Ohio. If anyone has any like questions or anything, I'm at 6:40. But anyone have anything?
You want to talk for a little bit about like, I don't know, what, like why is it important that we save some of the birds you were talking about, like scarlet tanager? Like a lot of people understand like they're declining, but like what are some of the effects that would take place if we were to lose them?
Do you want to go for it?
I mean, I can't.
Sure, yeah, if you want to, go for it. You have a chance to going.
Well, it's just like something I think about a lot is like we see that there's like a lot of endangered and vulnerable and declining species. And you talk to a lot of people and you're like, oh, what's the big deal? There's like 8 other species just like it. What's really going to happen if it's lost other than it just not being there anymore? Like, what are the direct effects on us as humans or like on the general ecosystem? And a lot of the time we actually just don't know. And that can be really devastating because oftentimes it's found out that, you know, these declining species are keystone members of some community, and losing them has a big impact on some other aspect of the habitat they're involved in. And that could be something like in Ohio, in a lot of our forests, a lot of these species are linked to trees that they occupy the habitats they're in. So then timber production is a big thing. I know you can talk about it a lot with like white oaks in eastern hardwood forests. White oaks are a big timber tree and important for a lot of different industries. But oftentimes, you know, you kind of have to think about why it's important that these species are going extinct. So there's kind of a reason behind doing things that contribute to their conservation and stopping those declines.
Sweet, thank you. No, I think that's good, yeah. All right, so don't have any questions or anything. That's just kind of a brief overview, but hopefully this is a good intro. If you haven't talked about that much, then just cool thing about Ohio specifically. So yeah, I'll come to Chipotle tomorrow if you want to just hang out, eat, all that good stuff. And then big day Saturday. So we'll get the teams finalized soon. And I'm very excited. I want lots of trash talking in the group chat, all that fun stuff. So thank you guys for coming out today. It's good to see everyone.